Faster Mai, hello and welcome to this edition of Agenda. I'm Ewan Gorn. Will the tourism and hospitality sector recover from the cancellation of another TT? Much of the impact will depend on the type, size and location of businesses and how finances have been managed. A Douglas hotelier explains how the loss of bookings will hit some more than others, and self-catered accommodation providers accept the decision and say it's a mixed bag in terms of impact on the sector. The TT is estimated to bring in more than £13 million to the Manx economy and acts as a significant cash injection for hotels and restaurants all over the island. The right decision made at the right time, that's how the majority of self-catering accommodation providers have reacted to the cancellation of the 2021 event. The head of the association, which represents the owners on the Isle of Man, is Sarah Richards. I got her reaction to the cancellation and found out what it means for her business and those she represents.
I think most in self-catering thought it was inevitable. I think we're very pleased that the decision was announced as early as it has been, because that gives us all the opportunity to work with our guests to see what they want to do about their bookings, and also, more importantly, to plan ahead for what we're going to do with that sort of 2-week period if bookings are rolled over or cancelled in the event of the borders being open.
Has it affected a large number of bookings then?
Oh, yes. I think, the vast majority of self-catering properties would have been fully booked for that period. So there's a lot of work to be done to, see what the outcome is going to be for each and every booking and guest.
Do you know how many of those may have been rolled over from this year, considering, we had the cancellation already and now it's a further one?
A huge amount. I would think probably the majority. And that's why I think we're also pleased that the decision was a clean cut one to cancel the event rather than try and postpone it or merge it with the classic, because a lot of us are fully booked for that already. So we couldn't have just moved our TT bookings to cover that period, and that would have been, I think, a bit of a PR disaster. And also, of course, it would have forced, in many cases, a refund, possibly. And I think guests, visitors, would just have ended up quite disgruntled in many cases, which we always want to avoid.
Rolling over the bookings from 2020 to 2021, and now the 2021 event being cancelled, everyone will manage their finances differently, but some may have spent the advanced booking money there. What is the economic damage here, and how is it going to affect the industry?
It will be varied across the self-catering sector, but it's undoubtedly very serious. Yes, some people, because of cash flow problems, will have spent whatever they're holding and, find it difficult to refund if the guest does not want to roll over. With rollovers, whilst many people have not sort of increased their charges to take account of a sort of an increased rate for 2021, it will be very difficult, I think, to do that for another year. And again, anybody trying to increase the cost of the booking may run into difficulties with their guests because they may think that that's unfair. So, there are a lot of potential difficulties here for owners to get through.
And could we foresee the amount of self-catered accommodation providers and places shrink as a result, do we think? Yes,
I can certainly, say with knowledge that I know of quite a few properties that either have been sold or are up for sale. This has been somewhat, of a last straw, but, there are other issues as well which are making life a bit difficult at the moment.
So what sort of issues are they?
Well, we've been looking very closely at the proposed Landlord Registration Act, because that was sort of really starting to catch a lot of self-catering holiday properties, properly registered holiday properties that might take a booking of over 4 weeks for a genuine visitor to the island. So we've been having quite a bit of correspondence through Rob Callister, putting our points across on that. I don't know what the outcome of that will be yet.
Do you think you should be excluded from that legislation?
Yes, in most cases, for any business that involves a visitor who is off island, doesn't have a residence here, but may be staying on the island for over 4 weeks, we don't want to find that we've got to register as a landlord, because then it's just sort of double amount of bureaucracy, really. We've already got incredibly high standards. We're graded, we're regularly inspected, and we just don't see the necessity for it. So that's one issue. And then, more recently, throughout the sort of booking platforms, there are movements now because of COVID to put into place schemes which are going to give the visitor confidence of cleaning standards, etc. And so we've now got that to take on board here. The department have very recently launched the Safe, Clean and Legal scheme, which is promoted by Quality and Tourism, which is our grading platform. So it is voluntary at the moment, but as I say, I think we've all got to do what we can to reassure guests for when the borders do open, even if there is a vaccine. It's going to be around for a while. So that, for the single property owner, may feel a little bit daunting as well. And so for a mixture of reasons, it's very hard for some owners to justify continuing with their self-catering property.
Do you feel those who are owners of a single self-catered property, for example, are they being forgotten about to an extent when these sort of more general bits of legislation and promotions and initiatives are coming forward, do you think?
Yeah. I don't think certain sort of departments seem to appreciate how we work. I think, for instance, with landlord and tenant, there's a lot of unintended consequences at work with, proposing legislation that is actually going to catch quite a lot of us for, bookings in excess of 4 weeks. I don't think that was envisaged by those promoting it in terms of professional landlords who only deal with residential tenants. None of our guests become tenants, even if they stay a bit longer. Yes, I think often, government departments can overlook how we work, what we're dealing with, and sometimes, the impact on introducing things at short notice without enough support there.
Can you give me an idea of the size of the self-catered accommodation sector?
Yes, we have around about 50 members. We have got on that takes account of, I think, just over 100 or so properties, and we're at about 500 bed spaces amongst those. So it's quite a significant portion of the the whole sector.
And do you think that represents everybody who is providing self-catered accommodation?
Well, only if they choose to join us, of course.
Do you have an idea of what the overall, including others, might be? Do you have a sort of an estimate of that at all?
Oh dear, I'm sorry, I haven't come armed with those
that's
figures.
all right.
I think previously, when I looked at it, I think we probably represent about 20% of owners, something like that. So as I say, it is a significant portion, and we have got a good mix in our membership of single and multiple property owners.
And is that spread across the Isle of Man?
Yes, very evenly actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Many have sort of said, the TT cancellation will hit Douglas, the hotels, perhaps more strongly than other areas, though, of course, campsites, there's all kinds of considerations for this major festival. Someone suggested that this staycation market, which does seem to be going very well, has sort of buoyed certain self-catered places, maybe in the sort of more attractive rural locations or older buildings around the island, has given them a sort of second lease of life in this difficult time. Is that overstated? Is that understated?
No, I think it's true to say that there's been incredible support from local residents for taking staycations, which the sector is really grateful for. It's wonderful, to have that support, but it is certainly a fact that, it has only benefited owners who have got the attraction of a rural or coastal location in the main. Anybody with, a very nice apartment or a property in and around Douglas, I think, has not, hardly seen one staycation, whereas some of us, my property is in Andreas, and I've been very busy throughout the summer, and I'm still busy, with bookings trickling on over the winter. It has been a bit, I wouldn't say unfair, because it's natural that people will probably want to leave Douglas and go outside of it, but it's unfortunate that some owners just haven't been able to benefit by the nature of where they are.
Government ministers have held this up as a triumph, as a sort of tonic to the awful financial situation in which the industry finds itself. Government's help for self-catered accommodation, how's it been received, and has it been enough to support the industry?
Well, first of all, with the staycation business, mostly I think properties have had to reduce their rates a little bit and also cut minimum stay. So it's been sort of working harder to earn less. So it doesn't replace normal business, and certainly the volume of it doesn't replace normal business. As regards the scheme, various schemes that have been available, experience is varied across the sector because it very much depends on how your business is set up as to what you might qualify for. The rates that were sort of set for the strategic capacity scheme were quite low when compared to B&Bs, guest houses, or certainly hotels. They started off at £5 per bedroom per night for round one. That went up to 10 for round two, and currently it's at £7.50. But that's compared with the rate for, say, a B&B room, guest house, which I think round three is something like 14 something. So the rate to start off with was much lower, the lowest of all the accommodation categories. And then, as I say, it depends how your business is set up. For instance, anybody running their business as a limited company but taking a dividend only would not have been eligible to claim for the salary support scheme. You have to be a properly documented employee of your company to qualify for that. And overall, I think most people would have qualified 1 and 2, but when it's come to the third round, which runs until the 31st of December, you have to be at least 25% below a comparable income figure for last year to be eligible at all. Now, that, even looking at my own business, if you're, up to 25% down on what you were earning last year, it's really quite a serious hole in your cash flow. And currently, if you're in that position, 0 to 25%, you cannot qualify for round three at all. I'm not sure yet what the without looking what the round four situation is. So it's been varied as to what people can claim, and even then everybody is taking at least sort of up to a 25% reduction on last year's income, which is when we've had such poor trading this year, we know we're going to have a very difficult year next year. It makes things very tight indeed.
So is that the forecast from owners and providers next year? You're not going to see anything like the recovery, even in the summertime when the vaccine may have had effect.
Yeah,
is not.
Well, hopefully we might be able to return to some sort of normal business in the summer, but there's quite an important sort of early period of the year when all of us will have bookings in the diary. So for anything we've got in the diary before Easter is most likely not going to happen, I think. And then, although the borders aren't necessarily going to be closed running up to TT, the trouble is by cancelling the event, that is sort of, I think, the perception that people may have.
Signals are closed for business, do you think?
And because our borders are closed generally at the moment, it's very difficult for people are put off from making a booking, even if it's for next summer. And of course, other places where they know they can get to in England, have an English staycation somewhere. I think we fear that when they get to the stage where, oh yes, we'd like to book somewhere, they're going to be able to book that staycation in the UK sort of with much more confidence than they can for the Isle of Man.
Well, what can be done to entice them?
Well, I do think, really, we need the Department of Enterprise to sort of really get into gear with doing some marketing to keep the profile of the Isle of Man there. I know it's difficult when we don't know what the situation with the border is going to be, but they're very good on to do that through social media. But I don't really feel that that's enough. The certainly when we get to the period after Christmas, then I think more needs to be done to promote the Isle of Man so that we don't get left behind. That's the danger at the moment.
I wanted to ask about where providers who may feel that this particular industry is becoming too difficult for them, are any of them considering entering the rental market more traditionally or selling their properties? What are the conversations going on, and are other areas more attractive for homeowners to go into now?
Well, as I said, there certainly are some sales. They've gone through, properties are up for sale. Yes, some people are looking at where their planning permission allows them to go into long-term residential as opposed to holidays, because obviously it's easier to find tenants than it is visitors at the moment. But the problem for some people will be that their current planning permission doesn't allow a long-term residential let. And unfortunately, the feedback I'm getting from one or two people who've looked at this is that there's no assistance from planning to sort of speed up the process so that they can sort of make the change reasonably quickly to be able to really look after themselves by, going into that market instead. Which is very unfortunate. During the lockdown, there was a very swift move to enable eateries to function as takeaways. But where people have suggested that, well, could they have a temporary change of use just to get them over the next year, 18 months, I'm afraid that has not been met positively at all. So that doesn't make life easy for us.
It's how long is a piece of string question, but when do you think the industry will be able to recover from all it's been through?
I think in terms of long-term recovery, I think for most of us that's going to take 2 or 3 years, because even if owners are able to ride these financial difficulties and cope with their cash flow, it really has put the brake on the sort of annual investment we make in our properties. Things like redecorating, refurbishing, refreshing interiors, furnishings. Not many people will be able to do that at all at the moment, and so it just means that we've got a longer list of things to catch up with as and when business does return to near normal levels.
Sarah Richards, the head of the Isle of Man Self-Catering Accommodation Providers Association. You're listening to Agenda on Manx Radio. A Douglas hotelier says how the cancellation affects businesses will depend on how they've managed finances. Michael George of the Welbeck told me those who've already rolled over bookings will struggle. I got his reaction.
I think it's fairly devastating news, to be honest, Ewan. Most people were hoping by early spring things could be starting to get back to normal, especially with the news about the vaccinations, etc. And it's kind of blown a bit of a hole into that. People have been supported by the government. For some people, it's been enough. I don't think it has been for everybody. We were in a fortunate position that we didn't actually owe a lot of money when the last year's TT was cancelled. So while it was difficult, we managed to survive that, and I think most of the industry has so far. But the worrying thing is that with a lot of people, that the TT was being prepaid. So it's another year of things being rolled over, and that money's the money that's initially been paid to them has been spent. For quite a few businesses, that's been a huge amount, and there's no way that they can
do it again.
Actually do it again. So it's just kicking the problem down the road for another year, I think.
Well, government has said it's going to step up its schemes for another month, and it's going to be offering loans, government-backed loans, to help those who are struggling to manage bookings. Is that going to be enough?
Each individual business will have to give you their answer to that. I think it would be enough for us to survive. Survival is one thing. To come out of it and actually prosper, having the hotel in great shape, doing the work that needs to be done inside and out, that's another matter.
It's not really for hotels, do you think? It's more for the sort of accommodation all around the island rather than the traditional hotels?
Yeah, I think they've found... I mean, why, with the promenade works that have been, why during last summer really would anybody from other parts of the island come to Douglas apart from the odd night out? Whereas I believe that a lot of the cottages, places like that, it's been nice for people to go out, stay outside Douglas. It perhaps has focused the fact for a lot of people, especially not in the industry, what a great product we do have on the island. Most of the people, though, that come from off island to stay in Douglas use Douglas as a base to explore the rest of the island, as people from here probably wouldn't.
Well, you mentioned the Welbeck. You've been with it for 43 years now. What does it mean not having a TT? I mean, you've never had this before. Now we've had it for 2 years in a row. Can you give us the context about how...
Well, there was a 2001.
Of course. Yeah.
For us, TT is a great part of our year. A lot of people tend to think that we spend all our year focusing on TT, which is nothing could be further from the truth. We have to look at the year from a 12-month perspective. TT, it'll be a major blow, don't get me wrong, but the TT isn't the be-all and end-all.
Do you think there is a sort of dependence on the TT? And do you think with what's happened now with 2 years in a row off, we are going to have to try and shift this so not everybody's waiting for that big event just to keep them going?
Well, there's no doubt that it's going to hurt. The problem is, over the last maybe 4 years, we've had about 4 new businesses come on stream. We've had the promenade works, and we haven't really had a big influx of people. The wages have consistently gone up. The likes of heating, etc., has gone up. A lot of places are probably... They were feeling the pinch before this year, and I hope that it's not going to push many of them over the edge. Government trumpeted at the beginning, I think in February, there was an industry meeting, and they were trumpeting how the numbers had gone up. But in real terms, when you take into account the extra beds that are on offer, I think most places weren't really feeling the benefit of that small rise. So I think really before the government looks at putting other places on stream, there's a talk of the Lord Street site. I think before that comes, they've really got to look after the current businesses, make sure that they can afford to reinvest in their properties before they give great incentives for new accommodation coming on stream. Are
you able to tell us the amount of bookings that have been affected for your hotel for TT?
Well, we're a full house. So that is one aspect that has really improved over the last few years. TT was okay. TT week used to get busy around the Thursday, maybe the Friday. But these last few years, probably since the centenary, it's massively improved its longevity. So it's actually been a full 2 weeks rather than just being kind of 8-9 days.
What are you going to say to these people?
Well... they're either going to have a full refund or have their bookings rolled over for another year. I'm sure they'll be disappointed. Perhaps they'll understand, perhaps they won't. And
can you afford that?
Yeah, just about. We were very fortunate. My wife made a super decision not to take any TT full payments this year. So we only had 1 or 2 that kind of insisted. I think she maybe saw the writing on the wall, so we couldn't spend what we didn't have. So we haven't got a great amount to refund.
Michael George of the Welbeck Hotel. A reminder, government is offering help for tourism and travel businesses that need to return deposits or rearrange bookings after the cancellation of next year's TT. Those who'd like further information on the support are asked to email accommodation.dfe@gov.im or call 686663. That's all from this programme. We'll be back with more from Agenda soon, and you can listen again to this edition via the Manx Radio website as a podcast or through Spotify. But for now, Guramayu and goodbye.